Shelagh McDonald was not just another young folk singer in the early 1970s. She was a revelation. Born in Edinburgh, her delicate voice carried a haunting, ethereal quality that critics described as otherworldly. With the release of her debut record, the Shelagh McDonald album, in 1970, followed quickly by Stargazer in 1971, she seemed poised to join the ranks of Britain's most treasured voices, standing alongside Denny and Nick Drake. Her music was tender yet powerful, blending vulnerability with timeless storytelling, the kind that leaves listeners feeling as though she had sung their own secret pain. But just as her career began to bloom, something unthinkable happened. In the final months of 1971, Shelagh abruptly disappeared. One day she was recording, rehearsing, and performing, immersed in the promise of stardom, and the next, she was simply gone. No farewell concert, no cryptic note, no whispers of a grand plan. She was a ghost overnight. Her fellow musicians were baffled, her growing fan base devastated. Rumors spread. Had she crumbled under the pressure of fame? Had she been consumed by a personal tragedy too heavy to bear? Or had the music industry itself swallowed her whole? The silence surrounding her disappearance made the mystery even darker. For more than 30 years, no one heard her voice, no one saw her face, and no one could say with certainty if Shelagh McDonald was alive or dead. The year was 1971, and Shelagh McDonald's second album, Stargazer, had just been released to critical acclaim. Music journalists praised her songwriting, her voice, and the sense of raw intimacy that poured out of every track. Yet behind the applause, Shelagh's private world was unraveling. Friends later recalled whispers of her experimenting with LSD, a drug that was spreading through the counterculture of the time. But for Shelagh, one trip would change everything. A devastatingly bad experience left her disoriented, paranoid, and trapped in a spiral of psychological torment. Her once crystalline voice cracked under the weight of fear and confusion. The girl who had enchanted audiences with her ethereal sound could no longer even sing without feeling haunted. And then, she was gone. No phone calls returned, no visits to friends, no explanation. She disappeared from the music world entirely, vanishing into the shadows of obscurity. For years, all that remained were her 2 records and a name whispered among collectors of lost folk gems. Fans speculated endlessly. Had she died young, like Nick Drake? Had she been swallowed by the darker sides of fame, or even chosen to vanish to escape it? Each passing year only deepened the mystery. Her absence became a legend in itself, a silence as haunting as the songs she left behind. As the 1970s faded into the 1980s, Shelagh McDonald's name began to shift from memory to myth. Her albums, once moderately known, became rare treasures passed between collectors, each vinyl copy treated like a relic from a vanished world. Music journalists occasionally resurrected her story in hushed tones. Whatever happened to Shelagh McDonald? The question never had an answer. Some believed she had suffered the fate of Nick Drake, gone too soon, her life claimed by depression or addiction. Others imagined she had deliberately abandoned fame, living quietly in some distant village under another name. The mystery became so enduring that even decades later, new generations of listeners stumbled across her records and were left stunned by the abrupt silence that followed her final track. Her music found an underground cult following. In smoky record shops and niche folk clubs, her voice would reappear through speakers, floating like a ghost across time. Young musicians covered her songs, Critics wrote long speculative essays, and fans who had never seen her perform live still mourned her absence as though she were a lost friend. The obsession only deepened in the 1990s, when rare reissues sparked a resurgence of interest. Letters poured into magazines and radio stations. Was Shelagh alive? Could anyone find her? Yet no trace surfaced, no death certificate, no obituary, no sightings, just silence, year after year, decade after decade. By the early 2000s, Shelagh McDonald had become less a person than a puzzle, a name tied to two hauntingly beautiful albums and a void of answers. Fans held vigils of curiosity, convinced that her story was unfinished. And in 2005, after 34 years of mystery, that belief proved right. In November 2005, after 34 years of silence, the mystery finally cracked wide open. The Scottish Daily Mail published a story that stunned fans and critics alike. Shelagh McDonald was alive. She had not died tragically young, nor vanished into some hidden artistic exile. Instead, her life had spiraled in ways no one could have imagined. Shelagh revealed that the LSD experience in 1971 had shattered her confidence, leaving her paranoid and unable to sing. What followed was not recovery, but retreat. Terrified, she abandoned her promising career, walked away from the studio, and disappeared from the public eye altogether. In the decades that followed, she drifted into obscurity, living a transient and often precarious life. She entered into a long relationship with a man who drew her into a reclusive, almost survivalist existence, cut off from the world of music and modern comforts. She lived without a permanent home, often staying in temporary shelters or isolated caravans, carrying only fragments of the life she once knew. The revelation shocked those who had romanticized her absence. To her fans, Shelagh had been a spectral figure, the lost folk angel whose voice was frozen in vinyl grooves. But the reality was far harsher. Years of hardship, poverty, and a stolen future weighed upon her shoulders. Shelagh herself admitted that she had kept silent because she felt broken, ashamed, and afraid of returning to a world that had once embraced her so brightly. Her return was bittersweet. On one hand, the relief was overwhelming. After decades of speculation, the woman behind the voice was alive, breathing, and willing to speak. On the other, it was heartbreaking to hear the story of wasted years, of brilliance extinguished, not by death, but by fear, circumstance, and an unforgiving turn of fate. Still, in her reappearance, there was a glimmer of hope. She spoke of picking up the pieces, of returning to music in small ways, of reconnecting with the identity she had buried for so long. Though her voice was not the same, her spirit, the one that had enchanted listeners back in 1970, remained. Shelagh McDonald was no longer just a myth. She was a survivor, scarred but standing. And for fans who had mourned her absence, seeing her face and hearing her words felt like witnessing a ghost step back into the light. For those who had carried her memory like a candle in the dark, Shelagh McDonald's reappearance was both a gift and a lesson. It revealed that behind every vanished name lies a human being, fragile and imperfect, whose story is often far more complicated than myth allows. Her music, once silenced, began to live again, not through chart-topping comebacks or world tours, but through the enduring power of her voice on those first two albums. They became more than records. They were echoes of the dreams she once had, artifacts of a brilliant career cut short, yet still timeless in their beauty. Shelagh's story is a haunting reminder of how easily lives can veer off course, how one tragic moment can shape decades, and how resilience can still shine through even after years of hardship. She may never have fulfilled the destiny the world once imagined for her, but her return proves something greater, that no one is ever completely lost, and even the faintest voices can be rediscovered. Today, listeners still seek out her songs, not only for their artistry, but for the woman behind them. A reminder that brilliance does not always follow a straight path, and that survival itself can be a form of triumph. And now, after decades of silence, her story is solved. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and share so more people can uncover these forgotten stories.